things. So apparently we were wrong. No, so it's
Oh no.
definitely fun to watch everyone kind of getting their traction and having such a great time with it because D&D is such a cool immersive hobby. I kind of found my way into it. Kind of actually beat me to it. I played D&D before I was an actor, but then I started acting and doing improv and stuff, and D&D was a really great way to kind of practice and recreate in those skills. Professionally, I kind of developed a lot of like nerd culture adjacent skills. I used to do journalism for like E3 and other nerd culture events. I used to work for an anime convention doing promotions and stuff. I used to work for theme parks doing sets and acting on stage. That was like my big thing for acting for a long time. So lots of cool different ways to kind of dabble in the space, like doing costumes and stuff. So it's kind of fun to find a way to take all of those disparate hobbies and kind of roll them into one thing. And so Neotropolis was a really cool like test of like, okay, this is like the final for like all of your like nerd hobbies. So it was cool. But that's me, yeah.
Thank you. I actually didn't know some of that about you, so that was awesome. Uh, Before we get into the meat of our show today, I am happy to announce that we're going to be having a giveaway provided by Mithril Armory. They're in the final hours of their Kickstarter today for their Dragonheart Hollow Copper Dragon dice. The dice are hand finished, and Mithril also unlocked a bunch of free Kickstarter stretch goal upgrades, including new finishes for the dice, an exclusive map and encounter, an oversized wooden case, and a dice bag for all those extra d6s, as well as free worldwide shipping. So, to celebrate, we're going to be giving away a free foldable d20, see mine here, to someone tonight during the show. All you'll have to do is type into chat your favorite weapon or piece of equipment in Dungeons and Dragons. And once you type it in, you'll be entered to win, and we'll choose the winner about 45 minutes into the show when we get a good break point. Before we start jumping in to talk about Neotropolis and our time there, I do just want to state a trigger content warning that there will be mention of alcohol in this episode, just to give anyone a heads up if they do need to step away. And before we jump into the questions, this conversation with Dwayne might be a little awkward because even though I'm the host of this interview, I was the leader of the Steam Camp and we worked together to make this. So I'm going to be asking some questions that I already know the answer to, but I want to hear from Dwayne's perspective. I want to hear more about you and your experiences and the things that you went through. So let's get into it. For our listeners, in your words, what is Neotropolis?
So, from the perspective of after experiencing it, Neotropolis is a desert is an immersive desert festival where people come together to kind of showcase the best in like their perspective on what this genre can be for costumes and art and personal expression in a cool way that takes 4 days and is amazing because that's not enough time to experience everything. So it's right now I'm still trying to find good words for it because like even their definition, it's really hard to like trap words, trap meaning like perfectly into words. Like you always lose some resolution. Neotropolis was a really good case of that. Like it's so much more, but it's a immersive desert theme experience, and I can't wait to do it again, get a better definition.
Yeah, going in, it was its first year. So we didn't
Mm-hmm.
know what we were doing. Nobody did, though. So we're kind of on the even playing field with that. Um, we were just told it's a cyberpunk immersive themed event in the desert, which is a strange place to have to think of cyberpunk. So thinking of cyberpunk, when you think of that word, Dwayne, what does that mean to you?
So I had the opportunity to take a really cool class that was called The Future, and one of the things I learned was literally about cyberpunk. I'd heard about it like a couple times because of the tabletop actually, but never really kind of latched on to it as more of like, oh yeah, it's another thing on the shelf. But like the high tech, low life, the idea that like even all the future promise of technology and like all the powers that it gives you, still there's human issues that are at the core of the issue, and to use the word twice. So it's interesting to kind of see how people are drawn to cyberpunk as like a genre because there's so much like drama inherently, and trying to solve these interpersonal issues while still dealing with like future technology and like, oh yeah, no, I've got cybernetic replacements for things, but can they replace these personal connections?
And what's your favorite cyberpunk media?
Oh, that's always a tough one. It changes from time to time because I kind of like listening to electronic music. It's fun to think about what things are like really cyberpunk and like, oh wow, it's like a lot of things. But when asked about this recently, I went back to one of my favorite movies that I didn't realize was cyberpunk until after like exploring the space, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Huh.
Yeah, it's a high tech, low life. Even with all the promise of memory augmenting technology, you can't forget those people that are important to you. So, uh, kind of in a fun, weird way ties to a little bit of what we were up to with
Yeah.
Synapse.
Oh, weird. I would have never thought of that as a cyberpunk film, but you're right. Was it Lakuma or something? Is the
Oh
memory? Yeah,
gosh,
something
I
like
believe.
that.
Yeah.
Oh, crazy. I would like everyone normally just jumps straight to like Blade Runner. I know a recent one that I adored was Altered Carbon. I think is
Yeah.
it just rose to like one of my favorite cyberpunk things ever. So
hmm
um,
I will say, if we're throwing out a couple, I have to give a big runners up to Her.
oh,
It's
so
another
good.
great one. Yeah. So
Ah,
definitely for me, there's like the interpersonal relationships between like people and technology are always a really cool one. There was a really I say this is like a in the best way. I say it was campy. But there's this amazing movie called Cherry 3000 that I got to write a paper on, doing the difference between like the similarities and differences between Her and Cherry 3000. This guy falls in love with his like cyborg, and he breaks it one night in a passionate evening, and he has to like go on to like this desert adventure to try to like find the last remaining Cherry models at the factory out in the middle of nowhere. So it's a fun one that very few
I've never
people
even
have
heard of
seen.
that.
And
Yeah.
oh yeah, no, it was it had its few fans back in the day, but it's definitely kind of definitely one
How
to
old is
track
that?
down if you can. Oh,
How
it's
old is
probably
that?
like
Yeah.
mid '80s, early like late '70s at the earliest, but like I'd probably say like '85 or so.
Easy.
But yeah, that was
I
a fun
will
one.
add it to the list.
Yeah, ever growing.
True. Um, so I remember when I was starting to like find a group of people to go to this event. This event actually was supposed to happen in 2020, like pre-pandemic, and then it got pushed back to 2021, and then it got rescheduled to this year, 2022. So it's been in process for a while. But I remember I was trying to organize a group of people to go, and you reached out, I think, to me to join the faction or see if I was going, and I curious what brought you to do that.
Um, so for me, not to give you too big of a head, but like you had done Burning Man and stuff. Like I knew Apply RPG was a bit of a hit, so I if I was going to try my hand at an immersive event, I knew that the Nightcrawlers as a group, as like an art collective, were like patterning themselves to kind of being a part of these style of things. So I really felt like, oh, it's a first year of Neotropolis, which is something that there's a lot of like my like for me as like a hobbyist, but also for me professionally in like the computer like science space, like I'm all about everything that they're like exploring, and I'd love to do it with a group of people who aren't who aren't complete novices at like doing weird stuff similar to this, even though it's completely off the rails, brand new first year kind of thing. So everyone's a novice whenever you really think about it. But definitely it was nice to have some people who knew how to do all of the individual things that they needed to do to kind of puzzle piece it together.
Yeah.
So
And you
that was the main reason.
and you'd never been to like I want to say like a camp away. I don't know how to label them. A camping immersive thing before, right?
No, I mean I've gone camping and I've gone to immersive things, but never gone to an immersive camping thing. So especially in going desert camping, which I learned firsthand can be strenuous. But there's there's definitely something else to it because like I've gone to the Ren Fair for years. I've gone and like worked immersive like LARPing events and like anime convention kind of special events and things. Working at a theme park, I was a special events host at Six Flags for like the better part of a decade, and so I'd come to work and be like, "Oh, we're doing a thing for Pokemon today," and I'm yes, I will be right back. I have Team Rocket costume pieces. Like, let's
Awesome.
go. Like, so it's that was a fun day. But uh, getting to wear all of those hats at the same time was like it seemed like a fun challenge, and it definitely turned out to be one, a fun one though.
And so I obviously know what we mean, but in your view, um, can you explain what what our idea was, what our concept was?
Sure. Um, so at the very first parts of it, we'll start there and kind of talk about where the rubber meets the road. Um, it was the core idea was we are a emotion spa, like some subdivision of a parent company where we are trying to cultivate bespoke emotional experiences for people because in this part of the future with all of the augments and the stresses of future life, people are having a hard time feeling what they're actually supposed to be feeling. If that means feeling anything because their augments are busted, or if that just means feeling what they hope to feel. So Synaptech, as like a company, was supposed to kind of come in and like bring these feelings to these people and kind of give them back those things that they were missing. Now, the fun part for the cyberpunk aspect is that's the high tech is like we're helping people feel the things that we want. So where's the low life aspect come into? And so that was kind of like it's a big company, and big companies have too many pieces in them, and some of the pieces, especially out on this di- distant asteroid, are kind of not being watched well. And so, what are they doing with all the runoff emotions? You know, the ones that they're not supposed to sell. And so, we kind of got to play around with the nightlife side in that regard, and kind of have an experience where people got to consume the negative emotions for positive outcomes in a fun way. So, but during the day, to kind of get those negative emotions, which was like part of the goal, was like, how do we give people these experiences? And so we came up with this multimodal, multi-sensory activity experience where people had like kinetic and auditory and visual and aroma-based interactions as well as edible ones, and actually got to feel emotions. And for some people, it was really powerful. Like it was really important and really powerful. For other people, they just had a great time. And so being able to be a part of anywhere on that spectrum was really cool. But it, we were trying to make something that we didn't realize we would actually be able to make. Like like because a part of this is like where's the magic trick, you know, like how much of this is smoke and mirrors, how much of this is like theater flats and like quickly painted balsa, and how much of this is actually uh, audiovisual simulation changing how people are feeling in a way that they signed up for and walked away saying, yeah, it worked. So that's what we made.
So I'm gonna give a little bit of backstory and back up because
Yeah, it's a big thing.
going to Neotropolis, you don't have to make anything, right? We
Yeah,
decided as a group of friends, we decided to sign up to be what's called a faction. And a faction's kind of like just a group of people who are working together to contribute something to the event. So you can go to the event and just be a participant, dress up in your cyberpunk outfit and roam around. But there are others people who work together with their faction to create the activities or the things that you can do at the event. So we decided that we were going to be overly ambitious and create something to offer to the event. And that's what Dwayne just described is the thing that we made. We made this fake company, very corporate company, and we submitted a faction application to the organizers of the event, and we got approved. We got placed on the map, and then people who came to Neotropolis could come in and visit our little booth setup that we had. Um, so coming into this, we obviously we're just a group of friends from like the convention scene, the cosplay scene. Um, so most of this camp hadn't been to anything like this before, just like you doing. What was the pre-planning process like for you, and how did you how did you like mentally prepare yourself for this kind of event?
So I came in with only like the timeline of like one like a well, our first meeting was like in January, and the event was like in April. So that was the timeline. We like my girlfriend Liz did amazing concept art, and that really helped kind of like seed and like anchor me in reality for what we were going to be able to accomplish. Because it was definitely it was fun in a lot of big ways, but it was like, okay, so we have a lot of parts that we have to fit together. For example, like some of the people who were at this event have had similar style structures before. And so like they were like redoing something similar for Neotropolis. This was like completely fresh for us as like a whole group. Like for example, like me and Liz, like what we did. Do I have any? Like here's a like a prototype, like the open sign, but like we made this big LED sign with dimmers and everything to kind of feel a little more like neon. And like I have soldered before, and I have made something with a controller before, but I have never made a sign like this before. And like Liz learned how to solder too, and so because like a lot to do for that to work. So it was well. I'll put it this way: whenever you're planning on like anything, like the last 10% takes 90% of the time, and so it was definitely one of those kind of things where we were learning as we went in a lot of cool ways. So like I learned that people who make signs professionally are worth their weight in money. You know, like it's a noble profession that people should take very high level of respect. But it's a fun set of skills to like have got to put into practice. So trying to map like on the fly learning to like there's a series of deadlines to also learning how to camp in the desert and like learning how to do that safely and everything. So like our tents, I'll put it this way, our tent went nowhere. Thank you so much. So like we had a very successful tutelage and like learning how to desert camp at the same time learning how to like it was also time to build stuff, and so navigating those two paths coupled with also the fact that I like had to move in the middle of it, which was like perfect timing. So it was a little bit of a lot, but at the same time
To be
having a
honest,
group
it
of
was a
people.
lot.
Yeah, you know, I don't want to just be like, oh, it was like the worst timing for me personally to go to this desert event, but you know, it was a blast. but but having a group of people to work together with, that helps like herd the mental cats, you know, but also like while we're trying to herd each other and move in the right direction, knowing that oh well, I at least have to go talk to these people on Friday, and I should probably have an update. So you know that kind of thing helps a lot too.
Amen.
Successfully navigating group projects in school. If you were able to do
The
that
deadlines.
successfully, yeah, then your choice for reality outside of school, you'd be great.
Yeah, we in our planning phase, we went in a lot of different directions, and I know that you and the what we called the lighting team really took the lead on a lot like major parts of the project. Like when you think of cyberpunk, what do you think
Mhm.
of? Like the first image you think of is is like a neon sign, that neon glow in the street, and
Hmm.
uh, light. So lighting was a big part of what we had to offer. Um, why did you decide? So the way we were just divvying up tasks is we made a to-do list of all the things that we wanted to do once we came up with our concept, all the things we wanted to have in our space, in our we were given the dimensions of 5 by 20, so we had to make this 5 by 20 scaffolding size space feel like something cyberpunk. Make our idea concept into reality. So we just put a list of all the things we had to do, and we had like different camp members sign up for different things. So what made you want to do the lighting part?
Well, uh, personally, I felt like it would be a cool thing to try to try. Um, but I also was like, I I have a weird, unique setting of like a unique grouping of skills, and it seemed like I was one of the few people who like would not have to go from 0 to 100 on making a sign in our group. But I mean, that wasn't like the only reason, but like I just had, I guess, growing up, like doing all the different things I had hobby wise and like work wise, especially at the theme park, I ended up with like a lot of skills that worked for an event like this. From like, I mean, growing up, like making sure that we were doing everything that OSHA wanted us to, so that like I, as a bunch of teenagers, turning a theme park into a Halloween event, you learn a lot of those skills that help for this kind of immersion. And so like I definitely wanted to kind of like give back, and so like there was a ton of things that I put my name down to help with, and the lighting was something I really wanted to help with because I knew that it was obtainable in cool ways, and I didn't want us to miss out on things that we could do, because I noticed that we were one of the few places that had changing lights. Everyone else had static lights, but like we didn't get to go super far into it. But like at one point in time, we flipped a switch and our lights changed in place, and that was something that no one else had because they all had single channel lights. So that was fun for me, getting to do like stuff that was a little reachy while still learning what my limits were. You know, that's how you grow.
Can you explain about the light?
Oh, sure, sure. So we talked about it a few different ways, and I mean, I think we went up to like the last minute, like still trying to figure out what was like the best way to like display it. But we at Synaptech for the nightlife, we wanted to, as we're selling these illicit emotions, we wanted to kind of really kind of lean into the spin for like the cyberpunk, like dark and seedy aspect of our. During the day, our booth is clean, pristine white, like you're going to a clinic, like a spa, doctor's office kind of situation. But at night, we completely redressed it with like grungy graffiti art and everything, and of course the black lights were super loud, and anything that could glow at all, like for example, like this sweatshirt, Jem's hair, for instance. We were bright in the night, but the sign, the Y in Synaptech, part of it would illuminate into an eye to really kind of lean into the spin on the sin what was happening. But yeah, just a little thing like that. Everyone else had really cool static lights, and I was like, okay, I see where people are spending their energy, you know, but also I see where we're doing something that everyone else isn't. So it's always kind of fun to not to so much like the competition of the event, but also just the idea of like, oh, that group solved a problem that we had in a way simpler way than we went about it. For me, that's I'll say it right now, like acrylic UV reactive rods. When
Access.
black light hits them, they're passive and they look so cool. And
Access did a
very
great
few
job of
tables
that.
were using them.
Yeah.
Yeah, very few groups were using them. Axis did set up their booth, and it was like, oh, of course, why not? But yeah,
Mhm. Um, so
I hope that answered why I took on
yeah,
lights.
no, and it came out so good. And just to clarify, Synaptech was this made up name that we made for our corporate company. The lore of Neotropolis was that this is a desert outpost in a far off world planet. Um, So there's multiple travelers and aliens and people who can come through this outpost. You never know what you're gonna see. So our fake company was opening up its first like pop up branch on the outpost. Was our backstory. Uh, so in thinking I remember in our brainstorming sessions we were thinking of what we wanted. We all chose a hill to die on. So we went around as a group, as a camp, and I had everyone choose their one thing that they really wanted the camp to have, or our space to have. But this is before we submitted our application, before we decided on our idea. And my hill to die on was something that I've never seen. I've been to a couple of these kind of immersive events, but I'd never seen a space before change and like tell a story just without the people in it and without the activity that happens in it. So I like my one hill to die on. I didn't care what we did as our faction, is I wanted our space to be able to tell a story and be like, maybe it's different. Day one it looks different than day two, and something gets like grimier and grimier. Or what we ended up with was, during the day we are this clean, pristine, uh doctor's officey looking spot, all white, and then at night we're like a seedy back alley, and it changes. The whole space can tell the story without even us there. So I think we did an amazing job of
Yeah,
that.
definitely hit that out of the park. Also, I will say this, not to like, it's not a competition because we're all working to the same goal, but like, we were the only booth that did anything cool like that. No one else had like a night day switch really, besides for some people it was just like, and now we do something different at the booth, but like no one was like redoing their design or color palette and everything. So
Yeah.
it was super fun to kind of see what everyone's up to and what cool things we can add to ideas for the future.
Hmm. And that's why your light was so cool. That like during the day it had our in blue. Also it color changed. I don't know if you mentioned that. That was so cool. In day it was blue and said the name of our company, Synaptech, and then at night the SYN turned into a red, like SIN, Synaptech, and it was perfect. um,
The best part was it developed the best flicker because I was trying to get the timing right, and long story short, couldn't. So I was like, okay, it'll do it, maybe it won't. And then like the last night when it was like really busy, I could turn on the sign and the eye flickered perfectly, and I was like, yes, it's blinking on and off so that like it not only do you see the eye, but also it reads that something's happening. It was a good time. I learned a lot in a fun way.
it's awesome. Yeah, and I was so thankful, and I know the rest of us are so thankful for you and the rest of the lighting team, because I wouldn't know the first thing. I would be starting from scratch on lighting.
Mm-hmm.
That's like one of the awesome benefits of working with a team to build stuff like this, is you never know what skills people are bringing to the table and what unique hidden talents they might have.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked a little bit about our planning and all the pre-build things that happened. Um, I know that you were an early arrival with me, so the people who helped build the city at Neotropolis uh, can have the option of coming in before the rest of the attendees to help make the city be alive and be active by the time the rest of the attendees get there. Um, so you joined me for early arrival. Uh, can you tell me how that went for you, and how that first Wednesday was for you?
All right. So that first Wednesday was Wendy. Like just getting there and trying to set up, because one of the fun things is that like once all of the attendees get there and set up their campsites, there's like this cool natural windbreak that occurs just by the people being there with their tents and their cars at a certain height. When you're arriving early, it's a flat plane of just the wind goes where the wind goes. So setting up a camp in the wind was fun. Getting used to that, we had a good block with our cars, so that part we eventually kind of wrapped our heads around, and like, but then when we came to the part of building uh, Synaptech's actual location, that was really kind of like eye-opening for what the whole weekend was going to be like, because my favorite part is like I've worked at theme parks for years, and like sometimes you get a map and it's a really cool piece of art. Sometimes you get a map and it's a very accurate tool. Sometimes it's somewhere in the middle. The map that we got for Neo was somewhere in the middle. It was really cool looking, but we thought we were farther away from the happenings downtown, like middle of the city. We were right there. Like one of my favorite things that we got to see at the event, if you're a fan of the show BattleBots, they've got a regional thing that they do, which is like super, like more passionate almost, touches more people individually, and it's called Smashbots. And they did a number of Smashbot tournaments at the event. Like, because we were in the center of everything, like they did it there, and I was like, okay, cool. You'd think you're going to be a certain distance away from like the show. Like we were like 10 feet away. People were using our chairs to sit. It was like we were that close to the happening middle, right next to the really cool big booth that the event runners put on, right next to just everywhere that we needed to be to have to bring our A game in a really special way that we didn't specifically ask for. But sometimes it's those moments where you don't ask for like the opportunity to shine, that you find out like just how ready you are to shine. And so we realized that we had to make the best with what we had, because we had a great thing to offer. And even though there were whispers that there might be another emotion spa type faction, which we saw on social media, we were just going to bring our A game. And so when we got to the booth and we realized that they gave us a range for the height of the booth, and I was like, they were like, oh yeah, anywhere between like 6'8" to 15 feet, and we all kind of just went, that's a big range. Um, so we'll bring enough rope to deal with 15 feet, but we'll plan for it to be 6 feet, and we'll kind of like hang stuff and make do. And when we got there and there wasn't anywhere to hang stuff at the 15-foot point too, we were like, oh, this is weird.
Oh yeah.
But due to amazing networking, we were able to track down somebody who was on build who could help us get not a roof per se, but at least get some necessary supports for us to hang stuff from. So we were able to get the walls up that first night and everything, and kind of get to a really good place. I learned that you can do so much with bungee balls in a fun way. Like I knew that like zip ties and duct tape, you can build a wall. Bungee balls, I did not realize were the necessary flex in that kind of math problem. So it was really cool to see everyone work and to start to kind of really put down the foundation for what was going to be a really cool weekend.
And giving more context, so the way that Neo is set up is so Neotropolis is run by the same people who run Wasteland Weekend, which has been around for a while now, but this was their first time taking a step into the foray of cyberpunk event. So this was the first Neo. But the way it's set up is there's a theme zone, and anyone who is camping in the theme zone or has a faction or a booth or something in the theme zone has to obviously be in themed. It's this super themed area. That's what makes the immersive magic to it. In that theme zone, there were different structures and blocks and places you could be, outposts and things. Like Outpost 66 was a themed outpost of a bunch of different things you can do inside. And there was a main street, and then there was something called Mega Block 1, which in the cyberpunk culture, in the genre, one of the core tenets is things being overpacked and it's close to each other. There's not enough space. Nobody's got yards and stuff. So Mega Block 1 was supposed to be like a city block where things are on 2 levels with scaffolding and really close and tight knit to each other. You can't even breathe. And that was meant to be like the main part of the theme zone. So you've got some of the main factions were in there. Our faction applied to be in Mega Block 1 because we wanted that scaffolding. We wanted to work with that structure and see what we can make out of that structure.
We
But
wanted
we did not
power
know.
too.
Yeah, we did not know that we were going to be in the main part of Mega Block One, which is where we ended up being. So yeah, like what Dwayne said, when we got there, it was like, oh crap, they really had faith in us. um,
The concept art was really good. The application must have been great.
Thanks, Liz. Yeah. Oh man. I know I got there and was like, oh no, this is a lot of pressure. Because it was in the main area, so it's the main nightlife part. It's the main shops during the day. We're all there. So
It was a
thinking
cool
of
place to be.
it was amazing. And thinking of our booth and Synaptech, uh, what was it? Can you walk me through, like, if I was a guest, or can you walk me through like a guest experience of what we were offering, like during the day? Let's start with during the day.
All right. So during the day, you'd come up to the booth, and there'd be a associate at the front taking names, because as with any good spa, there was a good long wait. They really probably should have gotten reservations going, but we weren't expecting people to want to come back at any point in the day at all. So you'd come back, and you'd, after your wait, and your name would be called, and you'd write down your choice for your emotional experience. And there were four different emotional experiences for during the day. There was childhood joy, there was relief, there was a sense of belonging, and lust. And that was our daytime menu. And you would place your order, and when you come back, there'd be a technician who would take you into the back, and they'd kind of explain to you what was going on. And I got to play that role a number of times, which was always fun. But so I'd set you down, and you'd come into this almost liminal space where it was just you and like a projector screen in this dark room in the well-lit desert. And the technician would come over and explain to you that you're about to experience a multimodal, multi-sensory experience with kinetic ties, as well as the audio-visual based cues here that's going to stimulate the emotional experience that you've requested at the front. And so depending on which emotion you experienced, there'd be different aromatic cues that one of the members of our group had. He mixed scents that triggered the emotions. It was like a 5-minute AV situation. So you're wearing headphones, and there's a projector filling your view, and it's showcasing like multimedia experiences that should trigger those emotions. So like playing with animals for like childhood joy, or like lust was a lot of interesting fruit videos. But of course, it's one of those things where, like, whenever the people who didn't know what lust was on paper, this is my favorite one, is like, if you signed up for lust, you loved it. If you weren't signing up for lust, it didn't make any sense. And it was like this funny thing where it's like, well, of course, it's not your emotional experience. But like relief was a crazy one, because in order to get to relief, you have to have something to need relief from. So that was a fun one that kind of leaned into like, that was like the most cyberpunky one of our emotions, because it took like it. For some people, they almost were like, no, this is getting me a little too hyper, and we gave them like kinetic sand and stuff, and like one of those like wind necklaces, breathing on their neck, so that kind of helped them stay grounded. But a lot of people would go into these experiences, watch what was on the screen, play with the tactile things we had, or like with childhood joy, there were things to eat or drink, as well as other, for a sense of belonging. That was my favorite one to try to explain, because like as it came out, I was like, oh, this one is new for Synaptech. Besides just being multi-sensory, this one actually takes place temporally. So like we had like a time one that I brought in, was like, because there was a book where people would write these notes to people who are going to read it in the future and stuff. And so we got to kind of talk about how that's traveling, like these messages are going to affect people throughout time. So we got to lean into the sci-fi spin a number of really cool ways. But people would walk out of the booth after this experience, and a lot of them were really moved to the emotion that they wanted. We weren't certain if this was going to work. And definitely some of the, when someone would leave childhood joy, and it's like, oh, well, in case the side effects, I mean, the effects don't last too long. Here's another like a kinetic anchor, and you'd give them like a stuffed animal, and you'd see people's face light up in a weird way when like they get to get this toy and go on with it for the rest of the day. And people would come back later and like show us that they still have it and stuff. It was really cool. It was really something special to be a part of.
And you said you got to play the role of the technician a lot. What was it like for you stepping into like acting role at the event? Role playing.
I missed. Growing up role playing, I missed it. Being an actor for years at a theme park, I missed it. Acting recreationally, I missed it. So there was like a number of places, like me being a technician and dealing with me used like in past life I was a massage therapist, so there's an aspect of like working at a spa that makes sense to me, the aspect of like tech demos and things like that I've done for jobs. So it's like there was a lot of this job where it's like, oh yeah, just go back to that day in my personal life, and I can drum up like a lot of like personal experience that made this make more sense. So for me, it was like I would have happily have just stayed at the booth the entirety of the day doing the lead tech role because it was just fun and coming up with the things to say that made sense. Like one of my favorite things that I like a lot of the anachronistic punky kind of things like steampunk to like, but I always kind of get weird when people like glue gears to the side of hats conceptually, you know? And so there was part of this experience for me, which was like, I want to use the right words. And that was like my little hill to die on was like, like if somebody actually wrote down what I said and Googled every word, they'd be like, yeah, no, that's what happened.
Amazing. I didn't know you did
But,
that.
oh yeah, no, because it was like, oh, what, like you go to like a spa or something, like there's words for when they use aromatics and stuff, and this is like, why don't we use this aromatherapy context for this and stuff, and we can really talk to all of this in like a real way. And I think for me, like, I also like had the opportunity to like working at theme park be a magician for a number of years professionally, which was something that very few people get to say, and like I even sometimes don't say out loud too loud because like I know people who are like actually practicing magician, like it's their real gig. And, like I got to like put on a hat for a few hours at a theme park, but like being a part of such like a long form magic trick that there's two types of magic tricks. This is my way to explain this. There's a magic trick where you say I'm going to do one thing and then you do something else, and then there's a magic trick where you say I'm going to do one thing and then you do it. That is magic. And we were literally able to do that. We were able to talk about the things that we were doing and just not like, oh, hi, you're going to come in here and it's going to be like we send you to space. And then when you come back from space, we're going to give you some gift from the actual future. It's like, no, we're going to help you feel the emotion that you signed up for. And people said that, yeah, wow, I really felt the emotion that I signed up for. And like, that was the most rewarding part. Like, but yeah.
Yeah,
It was
so
really rewarding to get to act and get to have that immediate feedback because very rarely as an actor do you get that like, so, oh, here's flowers, like, you did a great job, thanks, oh my gosh, like, oh, you're great. Like, very rarely is like, wow, actor, by virtue of your performance, I was moved to an emotional state that I desired. Like, that is that is like the whole point of acting. And like, you don't get a little like sign up card to make sure that you get it right on the way in normally. So it was really cool, and that was the best part as like an actor. Yeah.
so one of the things that like surprised me about our booth that I was blown away by. So as I mentioned how we divvied up all of these different tasks, right? We had a camp of 12 people, I believe it was 12 people, and we all divvied up took responsibility for different parts of making this idea come to reality. And the problem is that we lived in all different areas. So there was never any point between January when we decided to form this faction and April when we were at the event that we were all together. We were never all physically together. We all met virtually. We talked virtually. So everyone was working on their separate, disparate parts of this project, but it never actually came together until it was go time. And something that like blew me away was how amazing it all came together. I still it's been about a month now since this event, not even, and it just blows me away how all of us worked together, had our separate passions and interests and talents, and threw it into the mix, and it worked. That you don't normally get that. I think that's what surprised. One of the things that surprised me the most about our booth. Um, but I know that you played a huge role. You were working a lot in the booth. So was there anything that really surprised you or caught you off guard?
Well, I think like well, like I don't want to talk about like my favorite thing yet, but this is my favorite thing. The thing that surprised me most was the note we got at the end of everything from Medbay. That was so. I was expecting this event to be fun. I was expecting this event to be a lovely exercise in acting because like sometimes you do a performance and you're in what's called like a black box theater and it's like there's just literal black boxes around you and you're in a black box and like two black boxes in front and two black boxes windowed behind and now you're in a car and someone's in the front driving and they're pantomiming, you know. I was mentally prepared to act in that with that as the backdrop, like there's nothing quote unquote behind me but I'm going to pretend like we're at a business, and we didn't have to in a cool way like that. It was people bought into it more. Like that was another cool thing because there were no like I use the term not to disparage them, but muggles. Like there were no like normal people there. Everyone was like had bought in enough to the event so that everyone was like everyone's sense of disbelief was suspended, and so they were ready for these cool things to happen. So my the one thing that surprised me the most was how real what we were doing was for people. And at the end of the event, the medical bay, someone from there came up to us and gave us this feedback, which was this was blew me away. Out of everyone at the event, a number of people came to your booth and went through the Synaptic Day Spa. A number of them went through childhood joy. A number of those people who went through childhood joy were actually going through something traumatic in their personal life. And a percentage of them, enough of them went to Medbay and told them that they were going through something bad. They went to Synaptech, they did childhood joy, and it helped them. That they sent somebody over to us to tell us that we had been important for people in that regard. So much so that they're putting our booth on a list of safe places for next time at Neotropolis. So
No pressure.
that was something that blew me like out of the water in a way that I was never prepared for, because never at any point in my mental preparing for this event did I think that we were going to be helping people in that way. I thought we would be giving them a fun 5 minutes, but not really kind of like touching them or helping them navigate dark times. So that was the thing that surprised me the most.
Yeah. And our original concept idea was we were going to be like this corporate bad guy. And it turned out our effect was not what we intended.
So 100%. The way I kind of played into that still with my character alt was that Synaptech was a good company. Synaptech was doing the things that Synaptech wanted to do. We, as the people running this Synaptech location, were then doing things off the books in order to like make the month and things. And so that's where the cool nightlife came into play. And so that's where we really kind of got to lean into like the megacorp is corrupt because like in canonically in like the story that me and one of the other actors at the booth, his character Snakebite, were kind of playing it as like, no, this is how we're trying to fix the numbers for the month. Like we're trying to move this product. So it turned into this shady, like poorly run business with people kind of like skimming off the top or like in that regard or abusing the product. But the product was sound. The product was sound, and that was cool.
And thinking of the the emotions that we'd offered
Mhm.
on our daytime menu, which one was your favorite? Did you get to experience any of them?
So I never got to get the full ride. I
Yeah.
tried not to sample the product too much, make sure that there was enough for the clients. Uh, but uh, I I definitely watched through as some people were going through. I personally loved the concept of relief. It was the hardest for me to immediately follow the first time I heard it on paper, but then like it clicked for me in like a way that was like, oh yeah, no, that's how that would have to happen. You have to take them someplace to bring them back. Um, I think from a general level of acceptance, I think that it was actually really cool because the only people that I ever heard had a negative moment with any of them was relief because it could kind of be intense, but like, and one person was like, "There's a few too many dogs. I didn't have dogs in my childhood." But everybody who went through like a sense of belonging, like that was the one where I immediately saw the most people come out crying. And for me, that was like another weird one. Like there's like a preponderance of hugs in the sense of belonging video, and there was somebody who had finished the session, and like I came in not like boisterous, but like I came in like generic for like, oh, and your session's done, and like he looked at me and like as he was like wiping his eyes, that kind of thing, and I was like, oh, okay, well done on the blocking, that was perfect. But I was like, oh, I see that the procedure had its intended effect. And he kind of like nodded at me solemnly, like, "Did you need a hug?" And he just like kind of reached up to me. I was like, "Okay." So like it was really kind of neat in that way. Like it was like still I'm trying to like wrap my head around the different responses people had to the emotions because like some of them I kind of expected and like some of them I was like, oh yeah, that'll be a on the spectrum of emotional responses. I didn't think that so many people would have this one to the point where like no, my entire scale for like how people were going to respond to some of the emotions shifted across the event. Like oh, like someone might like we should expect people to be touched by this one like this, or we should expect people to feel like this, or like this group of people. Like we were like able to start learning the emotional needs of the crowd in like a cool way, but also like probably need like an ethics review board if we like to do something with some of these results.
Yeah. Yeah, I knew I set out like in when we were all just talking about what emotions to put on, I knew I wanted like a couple heavy hitters. I wanted funny and like just I wanted unique kind of emotions. And I knew I set out one of my goals was like this is going to sound terrible. It was to make I wanted to make people cry, but like in a good way. Like I wanted to move people to cry in a good way. And I didn't think that we would be successful though. So seeing that and seeing how many people did cry was just like a little overwhelming and like wonderful because it wasn't like bad crying. It was
Yeah.
they were just I wasn't expecting anyone to cry at childlike joy, and that one got a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
to cry. It was cute. I loved it.
Yeah, I know. Many people were moved in like powerful ways, and not in just like a way where like you catch somebody crying and like you hear them crying during the procedure and you go in at the end and everything's dry. Like no, like people would come back and tell you, like, wow, that was amazing. It was so amazing. I brought my friend.
That was one of our problems that we ran into is
Oh yeah.
not only did we not know that we were going to be in the main drag of the city, we thought we were going to be like in the city but off to the side somewhere. Um, but also the power of word of mouth. Um, we were not prepared for the amount of people who wanted to go through this experience. We had one booth, and we had to each session was like 4 to 5 minutes long, and we could only do one person at a time, and it just it ended
Plus
up a
reset
lot.
time.
Yeah.
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 Like initially, because we were trying to do some consumables, which would be kind of fun that we still have for next time. Uh, I had like done out the math on like how many people we should expect to see. We destroyed the average, but we were like, I'd say, because I still have to double check with based off of like the wait list. But from the people and the sheer amount of like consistency, I'd say that we got to like 75 to 80% of our like a maximum assumption of like how many people we could see, if not higher. Because there was a couple mornings that were a little light, but we would be packed within like the first hour after opening for the rest of the day, which was just like, uh, what? Like I imagined like the final nights were like the final night where you stayed open for after hour sessions. That if we had been any more vocal about it, we would have been packed the entire time. We literally had to like keep it kind of low key so that the lines weren't too bad.
Yeah. I felt bad. I felt bad
I know.
how many people wanted to go in and never was able to. So next year we'll have to plan for better on that part.
And also at least a couple of viewings. So
Mhm.
everyone was like, "No, I need to like, oh, we'll sit together." It's like, no, I'm sorry. I made a joke like, "Oh, we can't be held liable for what happens if you guys share emotional states for too long." You know, like,
So good.
yeah.
So thinking of the experience as a whole, the pre stuff, the actually running the booth, the seeing the reaction, um, what would you say you were most proud of?
I was most proud of how we were able to do the thing that we wanted to do. When it comes to an event like this, there's a certain level of like loss of resolution that you get from your concept into practice, and you hope it's limited. Heck, you hope you gain some cool new features somehow. But when it came down to it, we were doing the thing that we wanted to do in like the realest way possible. So like I was so proud. The first time I got like any level of positive response, like I was like the proudest papa. Like, oh my gosh, like we did it. Like uh, everything else from here is gold stars. We had one fan, and that like there's like the design standpoint of like you're writing a song or something. Like, yeah, everyone in the band, we like this music, so like that's why we write it. And when you have like one fan outside of your band, it's like, guys, it's real. When we had that moment, like immediately, I was just like flabbergasted. Like I had no idea how to wrap my head around it, and I was just giddy the rest of the weekend for like how cool it was to get to do the magic trick that we said we were doing. So I was just so proud of the fact that we were able to let people experience the thing that we wanted to, and that they got from it what we intended. Like that was I think that I will be chasing that high professionally in a very specific way for a while, because like very rarely like do you make a tool and people are like, yeah, no, thanks, that's exactly what I wanted, and like they go off with the rest of their day. Normally it's like, I didn't want a claw hammer, I needed a ball peen, and then they walk away. That's normally how it goes. And so for people to actually say like, yep, you made me feel the thing I did. Like there was one time where somebody was coming out of this was actually my favorite in character moment. uh, there was somebody who had like a friend asked them to come by and something, and like they got relief, and I'm like, oh, relief, our most arduous emotional experience. Like, um, and he's like, oh, okay. And he sat down, and I came back, and I was like, so how was it? And he was like, I mean, I think I felt relief a couple times, but he was like a little dismissive of it. And I was like, oh, so the procedure worked successfully on multiple occasions? And he kind of just stopped, and he was like, oh, yeah, it did. Like this realized I'm like, oh, I guess I'm not supposed to feel like it permanently, but like he just had this like moment where he like all the dots connected, and like he felt there was a moment of disconnect, but he's like, no, that's what I wanted to feel, and I did it. Okay. And so he like immediately got up, walked out of the booth, and was like, yeah, no, I felt relief. Like he literally like was the skeptic, got up and immediately went and like promoted it to a group of people. And I was just like, Oh yeah, no, this thing could print money. I'm glad that we're doing this as like a cool art experience.
Love it. And I was trying to think of my favorite moment from the booth. I gotta bring it back. I gotta bring it back to um there was this one man who came out of the booth when I was working. He was crying, and his friends ran up to him and was like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And he's like, "Nothing." I don't remember if he chose sense of belonging or childlike joy, um, but then he started explaining to us at like the reception desk that as a man he'd been conditioned so much of his life not to cry, to bottle up his emotions, and how uh, it's not manly to cry. Um, but recently he was telling us he's been going to therapy, and he's been learning to be more in touch with his emotions and how to express his emotions. So, I think it was childlike joy, but crying at childlike joy, he was just like, thank you. I was like, I wanted to cry at Neotropolis. I wanted to like experience like a true emotion. And I was able to get it here. It wasn't what I expected to get out of childlike joy, but he was thanking us at the reception desk. I was like,
Oh man, that's those are the moments from Neotropolis for us. You know, these are not what I bought a ticket expecting to go feel. You know.
that's true. Uh, so now that the experience is over, ended. How was so with these camping kind of events when you're off the grid for a couple days and you are in it, especially with how immersive Neotropolis was. How was it coming back?
It was so hard not to just describe everything in terms of Neotropolis for like 48 hours. Like I literally caught myself. We met up a friend from the internet, and we're like going out to dinner, and like I had to stop myself from like the third Neo story, you know, that kind of thing. But it's I I felt it in passing. Like you come back from something like E3 or from like Comic Con or something where you or like an anime convention where you've been there for days and you kind of like put up the blinders to it, and then you kind of take them down, stop being a weeb. But like I you get to wear the shirt still or something. And this was different because like it was. I mean, it was nice, like not being cold in the mornings. Still, like strong weather choices from the desert that weekend. But it was nice being surrounded by so many like-minded people. It's like if you've gone away to college or something, like when you can just like look around and go like, I know that person knows why they're here. You know that internal conversation gives you a level of camaraderie that you don't really get everywhere except for like work besides school. So like going to a place where it's like we are all NPCs being PCs, like we're all being the background characters for each other's experience, but we're also here to make sure that we all have a really cool experience. And like that was something that is hard to capture in your day to day, you know? Like even if you're like going to like for me like you go to a theme park, everyone bought a ticket to that theme park, but they all kind of bought a ticket to that theme park for different reasons. You know, like they might be the person who buys the tickets in their family and like they're there to make someone else have a good time, or they might be there because they have a season pass and it's like just something they can do. But like when it's a bespoke event like this and everyone like was bought into the concept, that was something that is hard to find outside of like other weird nerd events because it's like only kind of like in your fandom do you find enough like-minded people. But to kind of slap the genre brand on this, I see why there are other events. I see why other events in the space like Wasteland, while different, I see why they have such fervent fans. It's because like these are really unique experiences where you spend so much time and effort building something that's bigger than all of you could be individually.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think that's so. Thinking of anyone else who's listening who might want to attend Neotropolis next year, it's going to be in April. I think they've added an extra day, so it was just Thursday to Sunday this year, but I heard that next year it's going to be Wednesday to Sunday. Um, this is a great question for you because this is your first time desert camping, your first time doing something like this. Do you have any advice for someone who's looking or interested in attending Neotropolis next year?
Um, my first advice, and I'd be remiss to not give this, treat the weather with respect. Yeah, hypothermia is not a joke. That is something I can say from personal experience now. Besides that, be prepared. Go with a group of people who have done similar things before. It's easy to go to this with a little bit of planning by yourself and have a great time. I ran into a number of people who were making fast families at the event of like new friends forever. And they went by themselves. So it's definitely doable in that regard. But of course, this is one of those things where it's going to be a great event to have like the buddy system for. So making memories together with this is a good one. So like that's the core of my idea, like have someone to experience the event with you so that you always know where the other person is. But at the same time, like an event like this, like my solely positive, like just something like this requires a special level of like committed to what the event could be that you might not have had in any other space. And it takes like a level of like diving into the deep end that you are rewarded for in like a unique way that you don't normally get. Like if you go to work tomorrow and you just like overcommit to a specific task, it might not get you the right feedback as you begin to encroach on other topics or doing certain things. But those times in your lives where you can really just like dive into something and be rewarded for it, those are the most rewarding moments, you know, like to fully like get that feedback and that positivity for committing yourself to it. Those are the moments to chase. So if you find that at your job, congratulations. I was able to find that at going to Neotropolis, like being one of the pieces of the event made me feel like a part of it in such a cool way. So like going to the maintenance bay to party all night, like the DJ there was phenomenal, and like it didn't feel like, oh cool, I like paid to go to a club, like this is a bespoke. It was like, no, as like part of like the effort of being a part of Neotropolis, this is one of the many ways that I'm rewarded for my effort is by this concert effectively. So that was how I kind of was like doing my barter system, was like I was giving as much out to Neotropolis energy wise and character wise and whatnot. And so that I felt like I wasn't just stealing all this positivity from the event because I was having such a great time. So I felt like I needed to be doing more.
Love that. I mean, we technically, our nighttime activities, we're stealing the positivity of the event. uh, I do just I want to go back to the weather for a sec because the desert, we were as a camp very prepared for it to be hot. And then suddenly there was like a cold front the week before Neo in April. And all of my outfits were not cold weatherproof. That was much colder than I expected it to be.
I love watching so many people's like, oh, here's my costumes for the week, and then watching people like frantically change costume plans on like, because there was like a generic like a Facebook group that a lot of people were posting their stuff in, and it was just, oh, here's an article for jackets, and here's like new underlayers and things, and just like people buying extra layers because it was crazy. You would like, you'd be in the one night it was raining, and you'd be in the mega block, and like all the body heat and everything, and there's just enough of a cover so that people were damp. And then you'd go out into the cold, and people were like, "Oh no, I'm gonna fall over." So like it's but course, like, didn't happen to everyone. Like, they had a bad time because a lot of people were prepared. The medical group there was great. Talking with them over the weekend, like, I learned like there was very little activity from them, which is a good sign. You want them; those are the people, them in security. You want them to be bored all weekend, and it sounded like that was the case. So, uh, definitely though, if you're never gone camping in the desert, get a good sleeping bag. Make sure to get long. You can go with lag bolts, but you gotta get over a foot of depth to kind of get really any staying power in your whatever your implement is. But otherwise, you will be blown away. It was a windy wind. At its best, it was pretty windy like that, and then it got worse from there.
That
So
wind is
that
no
was
joke.
that was a special thing for me. I would have never bet. I wouldn't have bet money that the wind would have just been so constant. Like, I should have brought tights. I would have had a great time.
I wouldn't have. I didn't. I think I remember telling all of you that we shouldn't have to worry about the rain, and then it rained.
Yeah.
So
That was the best part when I was designing when I was designing that LED sign. It was like, okay, we're gonna have cover, right? Because like this isn't rugged by any sense of the imagination, like, but it survived the whole time. So I was happy with that.
Oh man. Well, my mods are telling me that we have a winner for the giveaway. So thank you, everyone in chat, for entering the giveaway for Mithril Armory. The winner today is November Leaves 11. So congratulations, and we will be contacting you. We'll reach out to you and get your information for that. I do want to open up the conversation to any questions from anyone listening. So if you're in chat and you have any questions about Dwayne, about Neotropolis, feel free to ask away. But while we are waiting for that, Dwayne, do you... Yep, there's the official shirt. Are you ready for a dicey question segment?
Yes. Let's
right.
go.
I'm going to roll this dice, and I will ask you the question that corresponds with whatever number I got. Big D20.
Here we go.
Can't move. All right. You're not going to be able to see what I get, so you're just going to have to trust me. All right, we got 5. All right. Dwayne, what is your favorite video game and your least favorite video game?
Oh. To quote young Neil, that's a big question. All right. What are you playing? So, gosh. Let's see. Okay, I'll try to answer quickly. My favorite video game. I'm a big fan of. Oh man, if I could only play another video game, like I'd say DDR. Like I grew up playing a lot of Dance Dance Revolution. I got a chance to like host a show at Six Flags for a while. That was really fun. But there's just something about they incentivize moving to the music and then like coming up with ways to play around with it. Like part of my brain is screaming because like I love RPGs and like. So then I guess that's like Crypt of the Necrodancer. That must be my favorite game. It is like if you've never heard of it, oh my god, it's amazing. It's a rhythm-based dungeon crawler. So like you can actually play it with a DDR pad if you were crazy. So many people online, of course, are speedrunning the game with them. But it's time to the music, and so like you attack and stuff, and you go through the dungeons like a roguelike. But it's really fun music, and I think I might be wrong about the artist, but I think there's a version of the soundtrack redone by the artist Chipsell, and it is a banger. Like the whole album, I've listened to the music like by itself, the normal music and the remix albums. So that might actually be one of my favorites. I just realized on this call, so thanks for putting me into a box. Least favorite video game. That's tough because like another one of my many stories. I used to be what's called an instructional student assistant as opposed to a TA because I'm not a I wasn't a grad student at the time. They made sure to like if you put the words TA in your mouth, they took them out. But for the video game program at my college, and so I played a lot of definitively bad video games because people will wait till the last minute to try to turn in a homework assignment, and it's hard to make a video game. So it's weird for me to critique art though in that way, but something I will say is a game that has bad conveyance in the best way is going to be Sonic the Hedgehog 06. There is a 3D Sonic game. I'm going to put down money that due to some powers that be nonsense, may have been an accident, they put like the tutorial like after the first act of the game. And so like you're going through like the first chunk of this game without any understanding of like why. And then all of a sudden, after like a major plot point, you're in this one level and it starts explaining to you movement mechanics. It's just like, oh, okay, something's gone wrong. Like,
design.
It's very difficult to design a good video game. I'm not sure what happened to that one. But yeah, that's my answer.
We tried to be different.
Yeah, there you go.
So we have some questions from the chat. First one we have from Arya's Daydream. What was the cost to have an experience at your booth?
Well, the cost to have an experience at our booth was 5 minutes of your time. The joke I told was that we were doing market research to see what emotions were best suited to harsh life on this distant asteroid. We heard that the travelers here, that they don't have time or the funds for proper emotional experiences. So like part of like the gross corporate like weirdness that we were going for is we would like be slightly like condescending in regards to like what it's like to live out there. But the idea was that we were trying to understand like based off of our 4 top selling emotions from the core planets, we've brought these options to you out here. And so like it literally you just came by in 5 minutes, like get some free snacks, maybe get a stuffed animal, get some break from the sun. So there's a lot of fun little perks to coming by, but it takes a slight level of extrovertedness in this regard. You got to be able to come up to the booth, be like, hey, what's this about? Be ready to have a quick conversation with somebody about what they're offering, and then you got to go through. So that was the extent of it, was just your time.
And some background, Neotropolis and Wasteland, unless you're an approved vendor, you can't actually sell anything. So they both generally run on sort of like a barter system. Like you bring things to barter and you trade with people to get things. But our booth, we weren't asking for any barter. And I think that surprised a couple people. That, nope, we just want your time.
If anything, it should have eluded them that they were the product. Like, if oh, cool, it's free. Oh, it must be me that they want. Okay.
I do want to thank you, Anonymous, for the 100 bits. And we do have another question from chat. What are your plans for next year's Neotropolis?
So to have a really good time again, to build on what we've done already, so part of the cool thing is by virtue of being a Nightcrawler's subsidiary, we can technically do anything we wanted to and call us another Nightcrawler's subsidiary. But because of how well we did, I know that there's going to be so many people that are going to be anticipating Synaptech returning. So anything we would do that wasn't that would have to be like, okay, so everyone's going to come by asking about, wait, where's Synaptech? So now, after that initial conversation, this is where the new story begins. So like, we'll have to either do a really deep filter on like, sorry, no emotional experiences here, or it'll have to be a clear tweak to the Synaptech story so that it gives us the necessary placement and change for the next year. That would be like if we were going to change, it would take 2 years. So I imagine that we just want to like double down on it, get maybe probably add to our selection of emotional experiences, kind of make the ones that we have even better now that we've had what those in the industry consider a dress rehearsal of the event. We have a lot of good ideas for next year where it's like, okay, cool. So now that we know how everything really works, because one of the big fun weird parts of this was how ambiguous a lot of it was. We didn't really know for certain what the next booth was going to do or what we would really have in order to do our stuff with our booth. So now that we've seen everything once, we'll have a better idea for what we expect to see next time around. But of course, everything is a moving target. The size of the mega block will probably change. Everybody else who did something will probably be doing something slightly different next year. So we at least know what like the scale is, but we have no idea, of course, how far the scale is going to move or how far it's going to stretch. So probably something cyberpunk. That's the answer I have.
I'm gonna answer that too. I think it hurt me to turn away people when our waitlist got full. It made me feel so sad to see people who never got to go through the experience who really wanted to. They kept coming back, but like we filled up so fast. So if we do the same thing next year, I 100% want more than one booth. Like maybe we can get asked for the second story of the scaffolding, so we have an upstairs and have booths upstairs, something like that. I just and like what you said earlier, making it so multiple people can go through because I want everyone to be able to experience it. That's part of the fun.
Yeah, yeah. But again, we did devote a specific amount of time to cleaning everything and like be careful with the couples. We had enough people who were like joking about going through lust, let alone people who actually wanted to go through with a couple. So you know, it's the fun, goofy people being fun and goofy character.
I don't think anyone knew what they were getting into when they ordered lust.
But we had people come back and tell their friends about it, so it means it. I don't want to say it worked, but it means that it definitely was not unwanted as the work. So
we like so as Dwayne mentioned earlier, the lust video was there was nothing erotic about it. It was fruit. It was all fruit, and so we had people come out being like, "Man, I really want a strawberry right now."
I had somebody comment on one of my Facebook like posts about the event with just like it was the little like demon horn guy and like different pieces of fruit and a little demon horn guy. I was like, I don't know what this comment is. And then one day I was just like going back through it and it just clicked like, oh, they ordered lust. Funny responses from people.
Love it.
But yeah, no, the 2-story next year would be great, but if we're going to make a bigger Snaptech booth, you know, that means they're sending us more money from the Center Planets, so we're gonna have to step our game up in fun, cool new ways. So it's gonna be, that's always the best part about this is the evolve, like the iteration on the prototype is like, oh cool, what can we do better next year? Like, oh well, this one thing worked, but could it have worked better? Or like, oh wow, it really worked, but then someone mentioned that we could have done it differently and like, we never even thought about that way. So like, there's so many things like that. I look forward to growing being a part of the event's growth and being a part of growing Synaptech and other Nightcrawler immersives. So
yeah,
it's definitely
part
good time.
Part of the magic is what can you do with a 5x20 space on desert. And like at first you think that you're very limited and oh, I'm in the desert with 5x20 scaffolding. I'm limited by the ground and the sun. But when you really come down to it, you're not. It's like you can figure out ways to transform that space so when somebody walks into it, they no longer feel like they're in the desert. And that's part of the magic to me.
Yeah, I agree.
We have one last question from the chat before we close out today. I think this question might be a little bit more geared towards me. But is there a max for the amount of people in your faction? So we started this faction with 12 people, and I think it worked really well. But we also met a bunch of factions that had one person or two people in it, or like a handful of people, because when you applied for a faction space, if you wanted to be in Mega Block, for example, you applied for either a 5x10 space, 5 feet by 10 feet, or 5x20 space, a 10 by 10 space. These are all very small, compact spaces. So at no point could all 12 of us really comfortably fit in our 5x20 space that we asked for. But the way that we did the division of labor and everything, I think it worked perfectly with the 12 people we had. But if we do want to grow next year, I'm definitely down for our faction to grow. The max amount that we can have, like, it's from the organization itself that runs Neotropolis. It doesn't exist for me as somebody who's project managing the group. I don't want to go really above 20. I think that we did a lot of like team building and things beforehand to try to get to know each other, because the 12 people didn't all know each other at the start of this project. And for me, it's important to, if you're going to live with somebody in the desert in these harsh conditions for 3 or 4 days or a week, you got to like them. You got to have that sort of camaraderie. You have to have that sort of respect and care for each other. And once you go beyond a certain size of camp or faction or group, it's a lot harder to build those connections. So for me, I think I would cap it at 20. What do you think, Dwayne?
So the answer to that question, the way I was taught it and the way I remember it is 2 large pizzas. If you cannot feed your entire project group with 2 large pizzas, they are too big. And that includes having to worry about food choices. So,
True.
So I think that you could get away with a 20-person group, but all 20 people at that point. So like, yes, 100% 20 people could work for one of these things, but everyone would have to be cohesive already. Like, for example, the fact that we met, like a lot of us met in person on like build day, there's a lot of just the inherent friction of like working together that you have to solve so many different times. Like you just have to like learn how you work with one person and learn how you work with this other person and learn how they work together. So now that you learn how the 3 of you work together, and then you have to do that for the network of 20 people. Once you've done it with like 10, and then you do it with like a group of the other 10 and the other 10, you can definitely get it rolling with the whole group. But for something like the way that we happened to do it, I think that 12 is like just the cap, because like when you're trying to meet new people and remember all the names and everything, there's so many of these fun little wrinkles that we managed to navigate, like because everybody kind of had the right perspective for navigating it, and we had done enough of the pre-work to kind of like be ready to meet each other in the desert. So like it wasn't just, oh hey, I've only seen a still of you and heard your voice. Like no, like the having your camera on does help. So like but of course there's so much of the initial conversation which was like, oh wow, you're so much taller than you look on stream. Like, oh wow, you're so much shorter than you look. Like, oh, the camera wasn't kind to you. Like, you need a better webcam. Like little weird stuff like that. Like I came back from Neotropolis and bought a new webcam. Like,
Oh no.
but like it was because I was in a position to make a bunch of new friends virtually, and the benefits I got from it were worth making sure that like everything works, you know? So I still stand by the 2 pizzas for an initial team size, but of course your mileage may vary. Some people are really light eaters, some people are very heavy eaters, so you know.
I like that analogy a lot. But I do think that brings us to a great stopping point for tonight. I just want to thank you, Dwayne, so much for joining me and for being a spectacular first guest. And thank you out there to everyone who listened and tuned in, and everyone in the chat for joining us here at Goodberry Cafe. I hope you've enjoyed your stay, and I hope you'll join us again next week on Monday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, same time, same space. But until then, I encourage you to follow and subscribe to our channel. And thank you, Little Steffers, for your subscription. And I hope that you all have a very good night.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.